How do we get those amazing images with sparkly, twinkly, bokeh inspired lights in the background? Let's take you to the streets of Birmingham and find out. Recently I was lucky enough to be invited by Spinebuster Media to Birmingham City Centre to photograph for their latest online show, and I got to meet with Aleah James, an amazing wrestler who we've worked with a lot in the past. And while we were taking pictures up against a graffitied wall, I took a little trip out for lunch actually to go and get something to eat. And as I was walking through the streets, I saw that there was this one little street just sort of hidden and tucked away with all these twinkly lights hanging between the buildings. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to do a portrait like that? So I grabbed a couple of video guys, I grabbed Aleah, I grabbed my Elinchrom 3 light, we went down to the streets to see if we could get some twinkly, sparkly lights and do a portrait with a difference. Now we're going to show you how we took that portrait first, but hang around at the end because I'm going to be showing you how we process that image in Lightroom and how we then take it into Photoshop, add in a few effects, what we look for to create an impactful final photograph. First off though, let's take you to the streets of Birmingham. Perfect. So we're just here on this street in Birmingham where we found all these fairy lights. We're going to try and make them twinkle for a portrait. First thing we need to do is we need to pick an ambient light setting, hopefully with as wide an aperture as possible. That aperture's going to give us a nice bokeh. On this 24-105 lens, I can only get f4 out of it, but we'll give it a go there. And we can take a shot there, around about ISO 400, nice and wide. And there we can start to see some of the lights in the background coming out. Now with this light here, we can turn it on, and for a portrait we can use this as the light in the foreground with the lights in the background, giving us hopefully interesting lighting patterns. I've put the power down here to 0.1 because I'm all the way up to ISO 800 on this. So that's 4 stops above what I would normally shoot for a flashlit portrait. Aleah's coming in here. It's an empty street, which is great. I'll take your jumper.
Thank you.
Here we go. Any sort of pose there for me, Aleah, and we're just going to see how this looks. When we focus on her face, beautiful. Looking straight towards me. Stunning. Nice strong pose there for me if we can, with the arms in there for me. Perfect. I'm going to take a low angle here. Nice on focal length is really important. It's going to give us a shallow depth of field, which means that all of those lights in the background are going to be nice and specular. We're going to bring you right off. We're going to go even further. So up this way, up the street if we can, Aleah. 2 yards, a little bit further. And get real distance between those lights and you. Nice Rembrandt style lighting. You're going to turn side on this way, cross the arms, open everything up. Notice with the posing that we're mirroring. We get to mirror everything that we do. Get a nice low angle, so instead of, if you can see here on the video, if we're high, those lights are in a line. If we come down low, it increases the depth of them, so that we can actually get them creating a pattern around Aleah there, which is giving us really interesting shape and form around the picture. Last little bit here, we're going to shape the light, same pose, but we're going to shape the light to a narrow side light there, which means that all of this tonality throughout the picture, throughout the portrait, turn the head this way very slightly, eyes back towards me, beautiful, hold right there. And in 3, 2, 1, hands on the hips there for me if you can, nice and posed. 3, 2, and 1. Love it. One where you're looking happy if you can. That's better. Hold that there. 3, 2, and 1. Love it. And there we have it. All of those twinkly lights in the background, giving us really different effects. All balanced out with the light in the foreground. So look out for these. Yep. 1.2 is beautiful. So if you can, hang on. This is a good point. This lens only goes up to f4. Okay, so I'm not getting much bokeh, but if you can get a prime lens, like a 50mm that goes 1.2, use a neutral density filter on the front of it, and maybe that's a workshop for a future video, who knows. Cheers, Aleah.
You're welcome.
All the best. So here we go. Here are all of the images that we shot from our shoot on the street there with Aleah. Not many there actually. We only had the opportunity to really get around about 10 captures because she had to get back for her match. When I'm looking through these images, one of the drawbacks from what we were shooting there was that we were shooting with a lens that only opened up to f4. The L series lens, the 24-105 that I use, is my workhorse lens. But the only drawback from it is that it doesn't open up to those super wide apertures that you might get out of something like this. This is my old 50mm lens that creaks because I dropped it on day one. But this one opens all the way up to 1.4. So we might have got some more sort of twinkly, sparkly bokeh style lights with that. We would have got them as well with a more long lens. So a lens with a longer focal length is going to give you more of that dramatic bokeh. So moving up to maybe like a 105 macro lens or an 85mm prime lens. Typically I would have used my 70-200 f2.8. That would have been really, really good, but I just didn't pack it that day, so we just have to make the most of what we had. With that in mind, I'm going to go through and sort of choose my favorite photograph. I like this one because I like her pose, and I like the lines of bokeh sort of going off there on the right hand side. So we're going to see if we can just emphasize that and the few little things that we can use in Lightroom to emphasize the bokeh in the background and just bring it a bit more into prominence. So we're going to start off by taking you to the develop section, and we're going to drag you all the way down here to the lens blur option, and we're just going to click apply there. And what's going to happen, there we go, it happens straight away actually. Sometimes it'll take a little bit of time, but it will separate what it believes the subject is using the AI within the software, what it believes the subject is and what it believes the background is. It's done a really, really good job here. You can change the style of the blur in the background and all of these different elements here, like a ring bokeh. There's a 5-blade bokeh here, which is going to give you slightly different shapes in the background. We're just going to go with a standard bokeh here, a standard circular, just like you would with a circular lens. And you'll see here before and afterwards, it's just made those circles pop in the background. We can change the focus range here with this slider down here, which shifts it from the foreground to the background. Obviously we want the foreground to be very, very much in focus here. We want Aleah to be the absolute center of attention, so we're just going to narrow that in there, so it's just focusing on the area around Aleah here to keep her pin sharp, and then make everything else get knocked out of focus in the background. And I've set my blur amounts here. This is just like your standard blur amount. You see on this slider at the top with the blur amount, the more we drag it to the right, the blurrier that background gets. So I'm just going to whack it all the way up to 100. Let's go max on this one. And then the boost, we're just going to add an extra little bit of boost there, and that just gives it a little bit just to accentuate that there. The visualize depth option here just shows you exactly where it's taking the foreground and the background there, and I can see that it's pretty much selected Aleah pretty well there. If we wanted to change it though, we could just go into the brush refinement. So if I select focus on the brush refinement and start painting on the unfocused areas, it's going to bring those into focus. And if I click on my visualize depth icon again there, it's going to show me there that there's a hot spot there where I've just brushed over. We'll go back a step there just by hitting Control Z. That always takes me a step back in Lightroom, so if I do anything I don't want to do, I just hit Control Z and it'll just take me back a step. If I select the blur option, the opposite happens. So if I start blurring onto Aleah there, we can see that we can make her blurry, and we're bringing her into the layer, into the area there where the blurriness is happening. But again, we don't want that to happen, so I'm just going to hit Control Z. We can change the brush settings there. We're going to look at that a little bit more in Photoshop there, but I'm pretty happy with the way that that one's looking there. So I'm just going to bring that into Photoshop now by right-clicking on the image, clicking on Edit In, and then sending it straight to Photoshop by editing Photoshop there. So we've got Aleah here ready to work on in Photoshop. I'm liking the way that the lights are now working in the background. They're very, very bright in the background, and that's dragging our attention slightly away from Aleah in the foreground. And when we actually look at her, the face is pretty much on where I want it to be in terms of the brightness. I want always looking for the face to be kind of like the brightest thing in an image, because I want people to go to the eyes, to the face, and then work around the portrait there. But they're really competing in this shot with the arms down here, which are just as bright, if not a little bit brighter than some areas of the face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer so that I can burn those back in without deconstructing the original image. So we're just going to go down onto our layers platform here, and click brightness and contrast, and it's going to give us a whole new layer here in our layers panel where we can adjust the brightness and adjust the contrast of the image there. Now what that's done is it's affected the whole image, so those lights have gone a little bit darker in the background and all of the skin tones and all of the hair tones have gone darker there. So we're going to use the layer mask here and select our brush tool and select it to black. So what this is going to do is this is giving us a brush tool where we can start to dodge in areas of the image without using the dodge, without using the burn tool to affect the original image. We're just affecting the layer on top by painting bits in and painting bits out. So using the black brush here on our white layer, we're just going to start painting away areas of this mask. I'm just going to select around about 40% opacity up here and around about 60% flow, and we're going to use a hardness of around about 35%. So a nice soft brush. And as we go into Aleah's face here, I just want to start bringing the face back into the picture. Get our brush tool there on black, and as we start to paint over her face, you can see there that we're just starting to get some of the lightness coming back in, some of that light coming up from underneath the chin back in, and some of this arm back in here. Now if I inadvertently go back over these forearms here, which are super bright there, you can see that there, I can always just Control Z and go back a couple of steps, or I can hit X on my keyboard, provided that my colors, my default colors are set to black and white. X will switch them round so that I'm now painting with white, and if I paint over it again here in white, you'll see that the mask is now being painted back over. So if we take our mask away just by clicking this little eye icon next to the mask layer there, you can see this is what the image looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. I want to bring in some of those highlights in the background, but not too much because I don't want them to be too dominant there. By hitting the square bracket key on my keyboard, I'm going to make this brush bigger if I hit the right bracket and smaller if I hit the left bracket. It's a nice way for me to just make that bigger and smaller without going up to my little options at the top. And I'm really going to bring my opacity down now to around about 10%, flow at around about 50%, and I'm just going to start to paint with black over these lights to start to bring them out into a bit more brightness, but not too much. I just want a little bit of brightness coming through those lights there. Now the image is a bit more balanced between the skin tones and the background tones. Nice balance there between the two. This little bit just underneath the chin here, this bright light here, I'm really struggling with because it's too close to the face and it's really drawing our attention away. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on my remove tool here, and I'm going to click on sample all layers at the top there. And we're just going to click on the layer just below. This is the background layer where this is. And we're just going to click around there and create simple mask there. Let Photoshop do its thing, and it's just removed it straight away. This sort of stuff, honestly, I've been working with Photoshop since 2003, and it's amazing that this is a possibility now. I want to make a nice clean jawline just around here, just down round by her jaw. So I'm just going to slowly paint just elements here, just off the skin, and see if I can get a nice clean line without that hair interfering in the image here. Let's just see what Photoshop makes of that. One and done, that's pretty good there as well. And then just looking down here, I didn't notice that she had her watch on, and it's not really in keeping with the whole aesthetic of the wrestling gear here. So what we're going to try and do is we're just going to paint really gently just around this watch here using the remove tool, and we're just going to see what Photoshop makes of this with a one and done. And we're going to include that little bit of shadow there just underneath the watch because we want it all to try and blend in the sort of one arm. It's going to take a couple of goes at this one. We'll get rid of that little bit there. So we'll give it another go here. We'll try and remove it. I've found in the past, if you do it one little bit at a time, there we go, and then just start to paint up, and then just start to paint this little bit out and include all of this element round here. Lose that. All the bits you don't want, you just start to lose. Now where that's blending in, we've got a straight line where the shadow is. So I'm just going to try and remove the shadow using the remove tool, see if it will get rid of the shadow and blend it all in. Started to there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to work on this manually. I'm going to right click on my remove tool and go to the patch tool. We're going to zoom in nice and close around here, and we're just going to grab a little bit of area of skin there where the shadows just come in, and we're just going to drag it around to an area of skin where it sort of matches there. There we go. And that gives us a slightly cleaner match in there. It's just started to lose as well a little bit of the arm here, just where it's crossing. So we're going to get our clone tool and we're just going to start to hopefully just brush in some sort of line there. There we go. Which mimics the line of the arm coming across. So we've sampled the arm just to the left of it there and dragged it across to make that refinement. We're going to right click on our brush tool, get our mixer brush tool and just give it a slight little paint over. Just a little paint over. And there we are. We've managed to remove that watch. And we'll just give it a tiny little bit of dodge just over, just to lighten it up slightly. We're just going to bring our dodge tool in here just to bring in some of these tones here. And then we'll get on the sponge tool and hit saturate. And we're just going to start to see if we can bring in a little bit of color. There we go. Just around there. So now that arm is without the watch and it goes straight in and it's been removed pretty quickly there. We're then going to look at a 5x4 crop so it goes onto our socials pretty neatly. So the 5x4 crop that I'm bringing in here is losing a bit of the arm on the left, and we've got, with the rule of thirds there, the eye more or less on that cross of thirds. I'm just going to bring it up slightly. There we go, just to get that eye right on there, just nipping off a little bit of the elbow, which I don't mind at all. And then we just use our generative expand and we're just going to see what the AI gives us in terms of just adding a little bit on top there. I don't think it's going to affect it too much. There we go. Nice simple portrait. We'll have some final color adjustments in Photoshop and we'll show you the final image next. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like, leave a comment, have a look at some of the other videos on our channel. And if you're not already signed up, sign up to nofussmust.com. All of our online training platform is there. These days I use Al Servo and I use the eye detection technology so that wherever I'm moving, the camera is focusing on the eyes and it's refocusing every time I move. I still use back button focus, but I like to use the technology in the camera, utilize it to its full potential, particularly for eye detection focus. And everyone who subscribes and joins up, you can get yourself a free posing guide featuring Aleah James. 100 poses featuring Aleah James, free PDF download for you photographers out there. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you on the next video.